At this time, I'm going to introduce our featured speaker for today. Bill Green is born and raised in San Francisco. In August of 1967, Bill was drafted into the Army and volunteered for the infantry. In January 1968, Bill was sent with the 198th Light Infantry Brigade to the northern section of South Vietnam, and 6 months later rose to the rank of sergeant and squad leader. Wounded twice, Bill received 2 Purple Hearts and 2 Bronze Stars. In September 1968, Bill married Peggy during an R&R and then returned to Vietnam for his final 3 months of duty. In August of 1969, Bill was discharged from the Army and returned to San Francisco to begin his 33 years as an electrician with the IBEW. In 1977, the Green family moved to Alamo, and Bill became a mentor at the Concord Vet Center and co-director of the Speakers Bureau of the Vietnam Veterans of Diablo Valley. Bill has served on the board of directions for the VNVDV since 2003 and served as president from 2016 through 2018. Please welcome Bill Green.
That's the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you. Okay, yeah, my name's Bill Green. I've been co-director of the Speakers Bureau for the Vietnam Vets of Diablo Valley since 2002. Both myself and Mike Martin have spoken to over 90,000 students and adults since 2002. Okay. Our speeches are pretty much the same every spot where we talk, but this one's going to be slightly different today. Our speeches start off the same, where we will look at our audience and ask, how many out there have a family member, a friend that's a Vietnam veteran? Inevitably, people raise their hands. Thank you. And we turn around and we tell those people, do us a favor tonight. If that person is still with us, and God hopes he is, because there's less than, 800,000 of us left out of the 2.5 million that originally started in this. Call that person. If you can see him in person, that's even better. And tell him 2 words. Tell him welcome home. Excuse me. It may be the first time that that individual has heard that, because as a group, a lot of us were not welcomed home. Most of us were not. Sure, our families and our friends did, but as a nation, no, we were not welcomed. The second part of our speech, after we turn around and do that, we give statistics. I let Michael do that because there's nothing more boring in this world than statistics. They're numbers. I'll put you to sleep real fast with that. These are a list of numbers, and I'm not going to read them all to you out there. You guys can pretty much see it. It tells when the war started, okay, officially, 1961, February 28th through May 7th of 75. But we had people in Vietnam long before 1961, as you will hear later in my speech. Over 2.5 million served in country in Vietnam. Out of that 2.5+ million, 7,484 were women. 83% of those women were nurses. The majority of the women that served us in Vietnam were nurses. Along with those, though, there was up to another 15,000 women who served in country in Vietnam. Red Cross, candy stripers we called them, whatever, they helped at the hospitals and helped with special services. Hostile deaths in Vietnam numbered over 47,000 in combat. Now, obviously, the wall in Washington, D.C. has over 58,000 names on it. Over 10,000 of those names did not die at the hands of the enemy. They died of either natural causes, illness, or something other than at the hands of the enemy. Of the statistics, and I'm not going to bore you with any more of them except for one that is lost. And most teachers that I talk to are really surprised when I tell them this statistic. Out of that 2.25 million that served in Vietnam, less than 25% were drafted. A lot of you don't realize that. Over 75% of those that served in the Vietnam War volunteered military service. As I tell my friends, yeah, they were the Army. They weren't the Army. They were the Air Force. They were the Navy. Majority of those 25% drafted was Army, and some of my Marine friends also. The second part of our speech, after I get finished, or after I let Michael bore you with statistics, we talk about how we ended up going to Vietnam, how we got there, and what our job was when we got there, and what our responsibilities were. For myself, in May of '67, if you heard, I tried to enlist Special Forces United States Army, and I was refused because I had asthma. They told me an asthmatic couldn't survive in Vietnam. 2 months later, we got this letter in the mail that's about to pop up here. Friendly letter. Starts off with the words, "Greetings." You know, I'm probably the only guy, well, I'm sure there's a couple others, that still has his original draft notice. Okay? So they drafted me after a couple of months after they refused to take me. When I got to basic training in a place called Fort Bliss, Texas, I volunteered Infantry Airborne. They wouldn't let me go in Special Forces because a draftee of 2 years doesn't have enough time in the military to volunteer for Special Forces. By the way, Fort Bliss, Texas, that was the first oxymoron I ran into in the military. There is nothing bliss in Southwest Texas in the month of August. Trust me, I was there, I know it. Sounds like somebody else was there. I finished my training, and on the 13th of January of 1968, I landed in Vietnam. I landed down in the southern section of Vietnam, Cam Ranh Bay. For those of you guys that are here, you all know where Cam Ranh Bay was. That was a stop and off point for us. From there, they shipped me up to I Corps, to Chu Lai, and I was assigned to the 198th Light Infantry. Before I went out in the field, they sucked me back into Chu Lai, and they sent me to schooling for booby traps and map reading. Yeah, had a funny idea what this was going to end up being. When I got to my unit eventually out in the field, my first day in the jungles, my sergeant walks up to me, hands me a map and a compass, shows on the map, this is our destination. You've had all this training, you're our new point man. Your objective is to get us there. Well, I had two other responsibilities as a point man. The second one was clearing out all the booby traps along the way. Vietnam was infested with booby traps, and the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong used them extremely successfully, obviously, to cause casualties, but to hinder us and slow us down. Your job as the point man, clear that booby trap so the guys behind you can pass safely. Your last responsibility, don't lead this element into an ambush. There's bad people out there looking for you, you're looking for them. The area I did this was in the mountains along the Laotian border. That would have been due west of Chu Lai and Tam Ky area. Some of these mountains have triple canopy jungle. A triple canopy jungle is so darn thick. You look up in the day and you can't see the sun. At night you can't see the stars or the moons. It's just one layer of vegetation upon another. And if the jungle canopy opens up enough for the sunlight to get down to the jungle floor, well, then the undergrowth gets so thick, a point man needs a machete to cut his way through it so the guys can follow him. I did this job for my first 6 months in Vietnam. I enjoyed walking the point. I voluntarily asked to stay on the point. As a point man, I think I saw every living creature that you can imagine that walked, crawled, or slithered through the jungles of Vietnam. All but one. Somebody told me there were bears in Vietnam. Trust me, I never saw a damn bear in Vietnam, okay? But in the spring of 1968, I did confront 2 tigers along the jungle, in the jungle along the Laotian border. These pictures you're going to see that we're going through here are of me with my guys, the 198th. Creatures that I ran into along the way. Obviously, I didn't see a bear. Some creatures I did not have a fondness for. Number 1 on the list was monkeys. I hated stinking monkeys, and I still do, okay? As a point man, you're going through the bush. The monkeys are in the upper canopy of the darn jungle, and as soon as they spot you, they start screaming and yelling and telling the rest of their clan that you, an invader, are in their territory. Well, unfortunately, the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese had ears too, so when they heard the damn monkeys, they knew I was coming. I hate monkeys. I really do. Snakes. Wow. Yeah, we got some of the most poisonous snakes in Vietnam that you can imagine. And you know something? I ask, especially the high school kids, I'll ask them, anybody in the audience likes snakes? And there's always a couple of kids that are going to raise their hands. And I look at them and I go, you're a sick puppy. There is nothing to like about a snake. Yeah. Well, one of those pictures that you saw back here was me 50 years ago. And on my shoulder was a young mongoose. By the way, that picture 50 years ago was also about 60 pounds ago, too. Oh, there he is, George. That's my buddy George. George and I had a very special relationship. You see, George was a mongoose, a young mongoose. He ate snakes. The snakes we ran into, different types of vipers. We had 2 types of cobras. We had a king cobra, and we also had a spitting cobra. Anyway, I continued to walk point for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, I rose to the rank of sergeant, and I was told by my lieutenant, find a new point man. Sergeants don't walk point anymore. It's not your job to be the first guy down in an ambush or a booby trap. Designate somebody else to do this job. I did not like giving up the point. I lost the first 2 men I assigned that job to in my squad. I lost one to a booby trap. I lost the other to an ambush. Both of these guys survived. Neither were killed. But neither completed their tour in Vietnam due to the severity of their wounds. They were sent home early. The guys in my squad, I talk to the different groups I speak to, and I tell them how close you get to your fellow soldier, the fellow guy in the squad. I was closer to those 10 guys, or 9 guys, I was the 10th one, than I am my own brother. And God knows I love my brother. But he'll never reach the place in my heart that these guys did. I ate with them, I slept with them, I fought with them, I tried to keep them alive, they tried to keep me alive. I knew everything about them, there was no secrets among us. To this day, I can tell you the names of the original 10 guys in my squad. I can tell you what state they were from, what town they were born in. I can tell you everything about them that they told me. Hell, I can even tell you what the hell their girlfriend looked like. God knows they told me enough times what she looked like. There was no secrets among us. We were family. We were the only family that we had at that time. But the unfortunate thing is you're not with that family for the entire year because things happen in combat. Out of the original 10 of us that started this journey in January of 1968, 9 of us were wounded. Out of the 9 that were wounded, 2 were amputees. Out of the 9 that were wounded, 4 of us were wounded multiple times on multiple occasions. Out of the 9 that were wounded, 7 of them never completed their tour in Vietnam due to the severity of their wounds. They were sent home early one way or another. And every time I lost one of these guys, I got a replacement. A lot of guys had different names for the replacements. In my area, we called them NFGs. That's a new guy. By the time I made sergeant and I took over the squad and I got a young NFG, I no longer wanted to know all that personal information of his. I didn't want to know what school he went to, what state he was from, what town he was born in. I didn't want to hear any of that. Why? Because I didn't want to get close to him. Now, he could always tell me what his girlfriend looked like. For that, I was all ears. But all the rest of that personal information, I did not want from him. Why? Because I didn't want to get close to him. I was close to the guy that he replaced. And I was under the stupid impression, as long as I didn't get close to this young individual, this young soldier, that if and when, and I probably would lose him too, that it wouldn't bother me. They just send me another NFG. But it doesn't work that way because I got close to that guy. Why did I get close to him? Because I ate with him. I slept with him. I fought with him. I tried to keep him alive, and he tried to keep me alive. And together we worked hard to complete whatever mission we were given. Some of these guys that were in that squad are listed on a wall in Washington, D.C. A long, black, shiny wall. On that wall, there's 58,000 plus names. The first known casualty in Vietnam that is listed on that wall is Richard B. Fitzgibbon. He's from Massachusetts. Richard was killed in Vietnam, according to Department of Defense records, on June 8th of 1956. That's our first known casualty in Vietnam. His name is listed on that wall along with that of his son, Marine Corporal, Lance Corporal, Richard B. Fitzgibbon III. His son was killed in Vietnam on September 7th, 1965. There are 3 sets of fathers and sons that are listed on that wall. The largest group on that wall in age are 19-year-olds. At that time, during the Vietnam War, there were a lot of young men who lied about their age to get into the military. And some of those guys were too young to be there. And some of their names are on that wall. There are 12 soldiers listed on that wall in Washington, D.C. that were only 17 years old. There are 5 soldiers on that wall in Washington, D.C. that are only 16 years old. There is 1 soldier on that wall, PFC Dan Bullock. He's only 15 years old. I'm sure those young men were not the only ones that lied about their age to serve their country. There are 31 sets of brothers on that wall in Washington, D.C. That is 31 sets of parents that gave up 2 of their children to that war. There are 8 women on that wall in Washington, D.C. "244 soldiers, Marines, and servicemen were awarded the Medal of Honor during the Vietnam War. 153 of them are on that wall. The most casualties and deaths in a single day in Vietnam was January 31st, 1968. 245 Americans died that day. For us that were there, we remember that as Tet. The most casualties in 1 month in Vietnam, May of 1968. 2,415 Americans died in 1 month, that month in Vietnam. Those of you that hear this, you hear only the numbers that the Vietnam War created. To those of us who survived that war, and to the families of those who did not, we see the faces and we feel the pain that these numbers have created. We are, until we all pass away, are haunted with these numbers because they are our friends, our fathers, our husbands, our wives, our sons, our daughters. There are no noble wars, just noble warriors. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That was amazing.